Is Mike Cleveland?
Welcome, everybody, to Inside Boxing Weekly. I'm your host, Mike Goodpaster, with my normal co-host, John Raspanti, but tonight he's going to be a guest. We're going to talk about the book he wrote with Jerry Fitch, and the name of that book is A Few Nore Rounds. So let's welcome John to the show. How you doing, John?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing great. Wonderful to be on here with Jerry. This is about the only time we ever really get to see that we actually have faces, right, Jerry? And
that's right. Such as it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see him. We talk every day, so it's nice to see him over there in Cleveland doing his Cleveland type deal. So, yeah, this is a thrill.
Yeah, I'm worried a little bit about the Cleveland thing. I'm afraid he might be a Browns fan, but help me welcome to the show, Cleveland boxing historian and author Jerry Fitch. How you doing, Jerry?
I'm doing fine, thanks. It's hard to be a Browns fan. There we go. I'm rescued.
There we
go. Blinded anymore.
There you go. We got the Hat Club going on the Inside Boxing Weekly show.
It's like an inside football show.
Yeah, it's an inside hat show. We could do a hat show from now on. But we're going to talk about you guys' book, A Few Nore Rounds. Both of you have written multiple books in the past. How did you guys meet? And we'll start that with Jerry. How did you guys meet? And then maybe, John, you can elaborate a little bit on how the idea to combine your work came up.
I think I first came in contact with John probably 10, 12 years ago, one of his boxing sites. I also believe somebody had mentioned his name, but it all started really when I came out with my Jimmy Bivens book in 2011. I don't know if I asked John or if he asked me if, wanted to review it. And so he did. That kind of started the ball rolling. And we've basically been in touch all this while, reviewing each other's books and talking boxing, and found we had a lot of similarities, even though he's, quite a bit younger than me. Although,
nice to hear
although this week he's older than me. His poor back. Oh, my God. But anyhow, that's how it kind of started. We had a lot of similarities as far as, our likes and dislikes, and of course the history of boxing. Even though John is younger, he, the stories he told about his father and Chicago and all that, it really clicked with me.
All right. So how did the idea come up, John, to collaborate and come up with this book?
I think Jerry can correct me here. I think he remembers better. I think we were just talking on Facebook, and he said something about maybe being interested in doing something with a co-author, and I was the one on the other end. So I probably got this wrong, but I think I said something like, "Oh, really? Do you really want to do this?" And I didn't expect him to say, "Yeah, I do."
Well, I had never collaborated with anybody before, and other than them helping me with research and that. And of course, I knew John had a very successful co-authoring experience. So it was the beginning. It was the beginning of the pandemic, really. I mean, it was only like a month into the pandemic. It was like April of 2020 when we started really talking about it. I think he thought I was kind of pulling his leg or something, but it just kind of clicked, and I'm glad it did.
Yeah.
All right. So Nigel Collins, John, was the guy who wrote the foreword to the book. You want to talk a little bit about you guys' relationship there?
Sure. Nigel was somebody that I knew from years ago when I used to call him when he was the editor of the Ring magazine. And I was trying to get one of my stories on the Ring magazine. I never did, but he was very nice about it. So that was good. But I always thought Nigel was a very fair guy, a very level guy. Obviously knows boxing really well, and he writes well. So I certainly had a lot of respect for him. And in boxing circles, his name is somewhat known. I mean, we were kicking around ideas. At least I was thinking about Carlos Palomino or somebody that I've gotten to be somewhat friends with over the years, Armando Muniz. But Nigel seemed right since he was the editor of the Ring, and he's got some books also that he wrote. And it just felt right to go with him. And I asked him, and I told Jerry, and he goes, "Oh, all right." And I asked him, and within 5 minutes, he said, "Yes, love to do it."
All right, the book. It starts off one of my favorite chapters, Jerry, and that was talking about you meeting Tony Zale, his wife Philomena, who actually played in the All-American Women's Professional Baseball League,
Yeah.
movie A League of Their Own. You want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Tony Zale?
Well, as I discussed in the chapter on him, it was a chance meeting. I mean, I was obviously very familiar with Tony Zale and his legacy. Being of my age, I started following boxing after he was retired, but it was still very clear in everybody's mind about those golden fights with Graciano and his career. So I knew he was going to. I was going to Washington D.C. On a mission for a guy here in Cleveland who was trying to sell a scoring. He had developed a scoring system called Soctron, where three judges would be in a soundproof booth with headsets on and pushing buttons, and that's the main reason I was going there. And I knew Tony Zale was going to be there, and I knew Jersey Joe Walcott was going to be there, and I knew Ike Williams was going to be there, but I didn't really think ahead of time that okay, I'm going to possibly meet him and say hello, but I didn't know how much time I was going to have. I had to show a film and give a talk. And I didn't know much. It was going to be a boxing league where cities had boxing teams and they would compete against other cities like other professional sports. Never got off the ground. But it turned out as I got to the a real old classic hotel in DC, it was the no, the Taft was in New York, the Mayflower. I don't even know if it's there anymore. It probably got knocked down, but it was one of these old classic ones. And I was going in to check in, and I looked next to me, and here's Tony and Philomena. And we got talking, and, of course, you say, I hope to talk to you later. Yeah, that'd be great. Well, you don't know if that's going to happen. Well, they had like a cocktail hour the first night, and that was just, that was amazing because I got to talk to all three of the fighters, but Tony especially. It was like just amazing how friendly he was. And of course, Philomena, she was, no offense, John, but she was one of these loudmouth Italians. But a good person. What a good person. It was, Tony's second marriage, and she really looked out for him. And she really was a great gal. And so, we did the usual conversations about fighters and fights and posing for pictures and whatever, which was kind of cool because he just jumped right in and kind of scared me a little bit because he launched a right hand right into my face, and of course he didn't hit me, but he stopped short. And that I use that photo all the time. It's like, but we said, let's keep in touch. And, you always say that to people. You meet people and you might go on a vacation and meet people.
Yeah,
and,
you say that to family members and never talk.
oh, yeah. Let's keep in touch. I haven't seen, and then, 10 years go by, you haven't even talked to them once. But in their case, it was different because that was 1974. And we did keep in touch for a number of years. And I did run into him, I think one other time. Between that and 1979, I ran into him out in LA at the Cauliflower Alley Club, which was kind of a cool venue. It was a weekly meeting of every Tom, Dick, and Harry that ever did anything, either in movies, wrestling, or boxing, that lived in Southern California that was available. It would last for hours because they would, Lou Nova was the vice president, Mike Mazurki, the actor and former wrestler, was the president, and they would introduce everybody that was breathing that was in the room. They introduced me, of course, and nobody knew who I was at that time. And unless they had read a couple articles, a couple features in Ring Magazine. And then they would do all kinds of silly stuff too. Billy Barty, the actor, a little person, as we would call him now, they'd ask everybody to stand up if they were in the back of the room. And of course, Billy stood up. And so one of them said, hey, some smart ass says, hey, stand up, we can't see you. Jeez. And he took it in good stride. But anyhow, as time went on, I got involved with the former Rochester Boxing Association, which morphed into the Rochester Boxing Hall of Fame. In 1978, they started holding dinners, and I knew a few people up that way, and they invited me. And the first year, they had Carmen Basilio as their featured guest, amongst some local other fighters. But they started asking me, by that time I had met several fighters. In fact, I was very fortunate. I had, incidents where I met multiple famous fighters. Like, for example, 1964, I'm just 17 years old, and I go down to the Cleveland Arena to watch Joey Giardello and Rocky Rivero fight. And they fought two fights, one in April, one in May of '64. And at those two fights, I personally met. I mean, when I say personally met, beyond autographs, I got to spend some time and talk with them, and some of them friendships evolved from it. I met Joe Louis for the first time, Jersey Joe Walcott for the first time, Ezra Charles for the first and only time, Rocky Marciano for the first time, Rocky Graciano, and Jimmy Bivens, and Joey Giardello. So they knew I had in Rochester that I had met quite a few famous fighters and was keeping in touch with them. So they said for the 1979 dinner, could I line up some famous fighters? They wanted to honor their own in upstate New York, but they wanted to bring in, famous fighters and champions from outside the area. So I was fortunate. Jimmy Bivens, I had quite a relationship with him by then from 1964, and really from 69 on. So he was an easy one to get. But I got in touch with Philomena Zale and said, would you and Tony like to come to Rochester? They want to honor you. And, the flight will be covered in the room and whatever. So they grabbed onto it right away. And in Rochester, upstate New York, anyone that knows anything about there, wintertime can be something else. They had their first dinner in February of '78, and, it was pretty nasty. So they said, hey, let's move it to April next year. So I always drove up there. It's like a 4.5 hour drive from Cleveland. Well, that particular year that Zale and Bivens were being honored, I think it was April 7th. But anyhow, early April, I started driving up there. As I got through PA, and as I got closer to New York, a blizzard hit. I mean, it hit. When I got to the border of the New York State, they had a National Guard out rerouting us. So my trip to Rochester took, instead of 4.5 hours, took like closer to 6. Well, the Zales flight couldn't land there. So they flew into somewhere. I don't know if they flew into LaGuardia or where in New York, but they flew in. Long story short, they had to take a car. They got there. But that just expanded things for my relationship with them. They had such a wonderful time. And I got to spend a lot of quality time with them talking. And we just kept in touch for years. I mean, Philomena would call me up and say, hey, did you hear about what they did to President Bush's, honoring Tony? Or you hear about this? And Tony's doing, and back and forth and back and forth. And then one day she called me and said, oh, no, I called them because I had heard a weird rumor that Tony had died. And God, I felt bad, but I wanted to make sure because it was a guy died in Arizona. So I called Philomena and, hi, Jerry. And I said, is Tony there? Well, he's sleeping right now. By the way, did you hear he died? I go, what? And she starts laughing. Some drunk, some alcoholic who must have had some kind of resemblance to Tony. Tony was never a drinker, ever. I mean, he was so proud of what great shape physically he stayed in. I mean, he was like solid as a rock when he was, getting older. So it turned out there was some drunk, and fortunately the paper, whatever the Arizona paper was in that area, called her, and she, as I put in the book, she said, well, if Tony's down there, who's this guy sleeping next to me? Or something like that. So anyhow, we kept in touch for years, and I contacted the one of our writers at the Plain Dealer, Bob Dogan, and he did a nice feature on that about the phony Tony Zale. But that's how it all started. A chance meeting in D.C., and they were just great people as far as staying in touch. I mean, you felt like you knew them. It wasn't like, okay, I don't even know if I told them right off the bat I was a boxing writer or whatever. But then I did I did some features on him in magazines. I did one. There was a really nice magazine that didn't last very long called World Champion. Lou Eskin, who used to be the editor at Boxing Illustrated, um, started it, and he had, I don't know if Nigel Collins was in there, but there was quite a few. I remember Nigel from a couple magazines I wrote for. The late KOJO Jack Obermeyer, who had probably attended more fights than anybody in the United States, he was part of the team, and some others. Uh, I did a feature on Tony in that magazine, and a couple others, but it was a lasting friendship. So I got to thinking about all the books I've written in my book, 50 Years of Fights, Fighters, and Friendships. I talk about a lot of fighters I met, more in little blurps here and there and casual things. And I had never done a feature on Tony. So when I asked John, I says, "What do you think about that?" So he said, "That's a great idea." Um, and when I sent it to him, he said, I want this to be the first chapter." So, of course, Tony and Philomena have been dead for a long time now. But Tony's nephew, Ted Zale, whose real name is Thad, but he goes by Ted. He and Clay Moyle did a beautiful book on Tony Zale, Tony Zale, the Man of Steel. I submitted a few photos for them, but the one that was the most thrilled was Tony's great niece, Haley Zale, who, as John would say, and I don't think this is not, off color here, is very easy on the eyes, but she's also very involved in boxing. She's an amateur judge in New York, and she has been campaigning for years to get these knuckleheads in Conestoga to get their heads out of their rear ends. Those belts that were stolen, Tony's and Carmen Basilio's, they did not cooperate whatsoever, and it's really bizarre to this day that somebody was able to go in there and just pick out those belts, 6 of them altogether, 4 for Basilio and 2 for Zale, if I recall. And there's been no trace of it. And when the Zales went zooming up there they live in Indiana. No, I'm sorry, they live in Michigan. They went zooming up to Conestoga, and they got no cooperation at all from Brophy and the group up there. And it's been that way since this day. There's been all kinds of money offered, and even Mike Tyson got involved in it. But it's that thing. But Tony Zale certainly is one guy. Where I grew up outside of Parma, most of my early life, had a fairly large Polish population, because that was back in the days when all these stupid Polish jokes were coming out, and how many Polacks does it take to screw in a light bulb, all this stupid stuff. And I get to thinking about that. But boy, if there was one on this earth that I would never have cracked a stupid Polish joke, it would have been Tony. And he was so proud. He belonged to every organization. He was honored, by groups in Chicago and Detroit. Great guy and a heck of a fighter.
All right, guys, real quick, I want to bring up to your top sportsbook comparison site is betting.net, which offers extensive reviews for the best sportsbook casinos out there. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. All right, John, I would like to say that I did notice that Jerry, I don't know if you noticed this, halfway through what he was talking about, threw a little dig in there that he had some stuff that Ring Magazine actually put into their magazine.
I heard that.
So I didn't know if that bothered you or not. I was hoping you wouldn't hang up. But I want to talk to you. I mean, we've known each other for probably 4 or 5 years now. And the thing that really stood out to me was the way we both started following boxing was really because of our fathers, I think. And I know that you tell a story in one of the articles in the book about your dad and Joe Louis, and then about a later incident when you were a young man in 1967, I believe it was, and some guys that were, for lack of a better term, racist, talking to you about Muhammad Ali. You want to discuss that a little bit?
Sure. My dad first and Joe Louis. Yeah, my dad, was from Chicago, and he it was funny how similar in a sense it was, because he liked Joe Louis immediately, and he's living in Chicago in an Italian neighborhood. Not a lot of fans of Joe Louis. And this is in the 1930s. So he just liked Joe immediately, and he fought in Chicago a number of times. My dad's just a little tiny little boy then when I think he first fought there in 1935, and my dad's like 8. But the story you're referring to, I think, is when my dad had to see Joe Louis fight James J. Braddock, the Cinderella Man, 1937. And my dad lived about 6 blocks from Comiskey Park. He used to go there all the time. He was already selling newspapers. He already had his first job, and he saw some of the baseball legends. We should go there, but I mean, he would tell me about, I saw Lou Gehrig, and I was like, oh my gosh, you know? And so he's got his little job there, but he wants to see Joe Louis. He's convinced Joe Louis is going to win the heavyweight title. So he goes there in the evening, different time, obviously. He just goes over to Comiskey Park and tries to figure out how to get in, which is going to be dicey. He has no ticket. I think he said he had like a penny in his pocket. That was a lot of money for him. And he maneuvers a way to get in. He gets caught by the security guard, or actually the policeman, who says, what are you? And my dad says, I want to see Joe Louis and fight James J. Braddock. And they actually let him in. There's one older, not Irish, not that I know, but policeman let my dad in, and he went up the aisle and stood there and watched Louis and Braddock. And I can't remember what round it was when he got in there, but it was later in the fight. So he saw Joe Louis knock out James J. Braddock and win the title. And he said he was just so thrilled. And then fast forward to, 1967. And Muhammad Ali was he was Cassius Clay when I first saw him. And it was in one of the Ring magazines. Saw this young guy that I thought had his tongue firmly in his cheek, making all these comments, and I just loved his guts. And a lot of older people did not. You know, he was brash, and he was, but I didn't take him that seriously. I just thought he was kind of a fun-loving guy who was trying to get noticed, and he obviously was. So when he decided that he was not going to go to Vietnam, which of course, as we know, took amazing guts to do that, in my neighborhood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, he was despised, just like a lot of people did all over the country. And this incident that you're talking about, Mike, was at a neighborhood barbecue. And everyone would sit out in the street. We take over the whole street, and they do a barbecue, and big fishermen and stuff. So they were making catfish, and these dads were all sitting around in a circle talking about things. And I happened to be near them, and one of them said, "Hey, I heard you like that guy Muhammad Ali." And I said, "Yeah, I do." And then we ought to be lynched, and he ought to be lynched, and all this kind of stuff. And it was terrible. I had never heard anything like that. I had been fortunate that I hadn't I read some of the ugliness in the Ring magazine, but it didn't hit me that hard as I was 9 years old then. So it was like that. But what happened is these guys are getting angry at a 9-year-old because he has the gall to like this fighter who's black and not going to serve in the war. And as they're getting louder, and I'm leaving some of it, so hopefully someone will buy the book and read what happens. But as they're getting louder, I feel these hands on my shoulders, and it's my dad. You know, and he was big to me in those days. He was 6 feet, but I looked up at him, and he said to those guys who had been saying, "Oh, you shouldn't like him. He had to be lynched." Blah blah blah. And my dad just looked at him, and he said, "My son has a right to like whoever he wants." And I remember thinking, I had heard that my dad was a pretty tough street guy when he was in Chicago in the 1940s. And I just looked at him. He looked like Clark Kent. You know, he had glasses on, and he wore a suit to work all the time. So I didn't associate the two. He gave those guys a look that I literally was looking up at him like this, and he just stared. And there was 5 of them. And they didn't move. They just looked at him. They didn't necessarily wilt, but there was no way they were going to say anything back. And his hands, he just kept on rubbing my shoulders. And I thought, wow. I mean, and he saved me. I mean, he came in, he swooped in, and he was my hero anyway. So the way he did that, the way he stood up to those losers was phenomenal. And it let me know a lot about him as a man. And I was always one that did my own thing anyway, but he reinforced it and said, yeah, you do your own thing. It's okay.
Yeah, because my experience, 1977, when Leon Spinks beat Muhammad Ali, I go to the next door neighbor's house the next day, and I thought they were good people. I played with the kids. They had twins that were brothers. We used to play basketball and everything. I was probably like 8 years old. And the same thing. The dad's in there, and he looks at me and he says, "You like Ali, don't you?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, I'm glad that N-word got his ass kicked last night." And I remember I was upset because I loved Muhammad Ali. I went back, and then my dad's sitting there in his chair. And I said, "Dad, this is what the next door neighbors said about Muhammad Ali." And my dad, he always smoked this pipe. He took the pipe out of it and blew the smoke out. He said, "Son," he said, "that guy's just a dumbass. Just don't go over there anymore." He said, "It's better to know what somebody is than for somebody to hide it." And I mean, I remember like Muhammad Ali, my mom was a big sports fan. So was my sister, but not huge boxing fans. And the night Ali fought Holmes in 1980, there was something called On TV that we had, which you could actually get the fights, because I saw that fight. I saw Leonard Hearns 1, Leonard Duran 2 that way. And I remember my dad had all his friends over. We watched Ali Holmes. And at the end of the fight, as the fight ended, I went in my bedroom, and my sister and mom were sitting in there watching it. And they were both crying. I mean, because Muhammad Ali, I think the big thing was 1967, he was public enemy number one. You get towards the end of his career, and I think that flipped a lot, John, because people realized what he said about Vietnam was right.
Exactly, and yeah, it was amazing because he was so despised when I was a little kid, and when he came back after what happened, and as his career went on, and I think partly what happens too is with athletes, people notice that they're losing their skills a little bit, and people that were like this about them start to pull for them a little bit more, and then they realize that yeah, everything he was saying and fighting for was true. And so he cooled some of his rhetoric down a little bit too, I think. And so it just came to except for some things with Joe Frazier that we
yeah
bothered me quite a bit, that because Joe was top notch, no doubt about that. So, but yeah, by that time, if he had left it alone, I mean, I maybe this isn't right to say, but this is how I felt. He beat Spinks in the rematch. He just couldn't resist coming back, and my dad was right about that one. My dad said, he goes, "Are you going to get that one?" And I said, "No." And he goes, "Don't, because Larry Holmes he's too old. Muhammad's too old, and he's past
The
it."
thing that struck me about that is that I think at one point, Ali looked like he weighed like 217, 218.
He did, yeah. He looked good.
Really good. And it was the day before the fight, and there was a preview show on. I told my dad, I said, "I think he can win." And my dad looked at me and said, "There's no way, son."
Yeah, that's exactly. My dad wasn't always right. He told me that George Foreman was going to destroy Muhammad Ali. So I always remembered that. And we had seen George Foreman getting ready to train for that fight. And that was, oh my gosh, was that an experience? Another story for another day. But yeah, that was really one of the saddest times in my, I have not watched barely any of that fight. I don't want to see it. I haven't seen the Spinks 1 fight since it first happened. It's so hard with somebody that you like and admire. I remember even Willie Mays when he was on the Mets, dropping a fly ball out in center field, stumbling. I mean, it's so hard to get old. And these guys are like, especially in my day, and I think your day and Jerry's day too, Mike, these guys were like gods to us.
Yeah.
And to see them get old is hard. And they're just human beings, but they're such superior human beings. To see that, it just breaks your heart. And that's what with Muhammad Ali, with me, I was heartbroken.
Yeah, and the sad thing for boxing fans today, Jerry, is there are no more Supermen, are there?
No. The thing is about that, what John's saying is 100% true, but the difference is you don't want to see any of these greats or near greats embarrass themselves like he's talking about Willie Mays. Willie Mays muffs a ball or strikes out on an easy pitch, whatever you want to say. But boxers, when they have the consequences, are far more than embarrassment.
Exactly.
All right, now since you are the Cleveland boxing guy, Jerry, we got to talk about Jimmy Bivens, because actually, the quote in the book, Jimmy Bivens said, "Ask Jerry Fitch; he knows more about me than I do." You want to talk about how that relationship came about?
Yeah, it kind of embarrassed me because, I mean, some people might think, well, what's wrong with him? Is he punchy? How could Jerry know more about him? But it just, you know, when you're going through a career like that and you're constantly fighting. I mean, when you're fighting, his pro career was like 15 years and a lot of fights, 112 fights. Uh, Maybe you don't, you know, you're going through it. It's just like a job almost. Those guys were, some of them had jobs outside of the ring, but most of them, if they're fighting that often, they couldn't. And when I met him in '64 with that group of fighters, in fact, I have a picture in my latest book, The Cleveland Arena. I didn't take the picture, but it's a great picture. It's Jimmy Ezzard. No, I'm sorry. Jimmy Ezzard Charles and Joe Louis together in the ring that day. And it's just amazing. So I met him. I got his autograph. Uh, got in touch with him a few times, but in 1969, he had taken over this gym on the west side of Cleveland, and I started hanging out there. And the thing about this guy, um, you hear stories. I get kind of mad sometimes when people dig up dirt after all these years about personal things. If you're going to rate a fighter or you're going to, you know, talk about the career, and if you want to say something like, oh, he really looked lousy against so and so, well, that's okay, and that's your opinion. But when you start digging up about divorces and everything else, he was a arrogant SOB. Well, was or not, he might have been when he was younger. I mean, success came to when he first realized he knew how to fight. In fact, he was a very good student in high school, and some of the other classmates used to ask him for answers to test, and he'd give them the wrong answer. And of course, then one guy who had some amateur fights went chasing him down the street. Well, first he didn't catch him because Jimmy was a distance runner in high school at Glenville High School. But eventually he had to stand his ground, and he beat the living tar out of this guy, And then Jesse Owens, of all people, I did a feature in Ring Magazine, and I think it was 1973 or 4, somewhere around there. And the way they titled it was Jesse Owens persuaded Jimmy Bivens to become a fighter. Well, Jimmy said what Jesse said to him. He didn't specifically say become a fighter. Jimmy had started doing some amateur Golden Glove things then, but he said he knew himself. Here's one of the greatest athletes ever. Set world records when he was still in college, and then of course Olympics, and basically didn't as a runner. Forget about running. You're not going to make any money there. Boxing's probably better for you, and it turned out to be. When you talk about nowadays, Jimmy's biggest purse was $40,000 in 1951 when he fought Joe Louis, but he was fighting regularly, and he was getting some decent purses, and he was very frugal. In later years, me and my then wife, he'd call up and say, "Hey, I got some to a clam bake, or I got some tickets to such and such. Would be my guest." We'd go and I never told everybody when we'd get there. And he'd go, "Hey, by the way, Jimmy comped us." But people would say, "Oh, that Jimmy's so damn cheap." Well, what it was is he was frugal, not cheap. He ended up buying a house for his parents. He got a nice house for himself. Unfortunately, he did lose a huge chunk during a divorce, but he was very smart with his money, and just a good guy. So he would give me, he had scrapbooks that his mother and he had 2 sisters would make, and he kept them. So he'd give me the scrapbooks. I would take them, and they were falling apart. I would repair them. I would photocopy a lot of the important important information. He had photos that I was able to copy, so I did know a lot about him, and I would pick his brain. I have a tape somewhere on, from a cassette tape. He was training a decent fighter named Ralph Moncrief, who fought for a long time. He wasn't a great fighter, but he was a decent fighter. In fact, he went over to South Africa and won 2 big victories over there against their best middleweights. But he was training Ralph Moncrief, and we're at a gym, and the bell's ringing, and all kinds of activity. You're hitting bags are being hit and whatever. But I'm talking to Jimmy. I'm asking him about. I'm taping all this about all the different fighters. So he would tell me what his opinion was of Archie Moore or Ezra Charles and Joe Louis and different things. And he never had anything negative to say. He didn't say, that guy was, he could have too, because Archie Moore was running around with his wife. And when they fought in 1945 down to Cleveland Stadium, she was sitting ringside. They were still married. She was sitting ringside rooting for Archie. And so Jimmy really took it to Archie. In fact, he knocked him down. And while Archie was on one knee, he cold cocked him with a left hook. And Archie, the Cleveland Boxing Commission at the time didn't know what to do, I think. So they didn't disqualify Jimmy. They took away points and gave Archie the round, whatever. And a couple rounds later, Archie got knocked down for like the 5th or 6th time.
But Jerry, from reading that story there that you got in the book, it seems that Archie Moore was doing Jimmy a favor.
Yeah. She turned out to be, and here again, I mentioned there, I didn't expect Jimmy to, start ranting and raving and calling her all kinds of names, but he basically just said she was something else. Well, she ended up being, as the book in the chapter talking about a legal precedent about a search and seizure, and she was a real nut job, and plus involved with legal things, drugs and gambling and whatever. But Jimmy, after a while, because he'd like forget something. He wasn't very forgetful until the last couple of years of his life, but he'd say, "Go over and ask Jerry. He knows more about me than I do." And people would look at me like, "What?" Because at that time I was only in my 20s, early 30s then, and like, well, how could he know more about you? He never saw you fight. Well, I didn't. I've seen footage, and I talked to. That's always been fun for me to go to. One particular trip to LA, I went to a boxing dinner that I was involved with the former World Boxing Hall of Fame, and there was 28 champions there, and I managed to interview most all of them long enough to ask them a lot of personal questions about. Especially, I really like the idea, like, who was your toughest opponent? So you got a guy like Jimmy McLaren, and you'd think he'd say, Barney Ross or whatever, some of the ones you're more familiar with, Tony Canzoneri or Kid Kaplan. No, he says, the toughest guy I ever fought was Billy Patrol, the Fargo Express. That guy was something else. He should have been a champ. And Jimmy would say the same thing right away. You think he's going to say Joe Louis or Ezra Charles, but he would name some other fighters too that just gave him fits. And then this happened with a lot of fighters I met, but Jimmy was very honest about it. He never made excuses. The one thing he didn't talk about, and I'm not even sure if I would have really have done an in-depth part of it in a chapter, but basically I can say this now, and it's true. Jimmy got drafted in February of 1944. As the war was winding down quite a bit, but it was still going on, and he got stationed in Texas. Now here again, don't know the details. This is not that it's great now. All you have to do is turn on the news every day, and we just had a terrible shooting in Akron, Ohio. But I can just imagine if Jimmy even showed the slightest cockiness when he was down there, because he was at that stage, he was number one rated in the world, and for a period of time there, in the end of 43, early 44, he was number one in the heavyweight and the light heavyweight division at the same time. But anyhow, long story short, apparently these MPs who obviously were white beat the crap out of him, and I'm sure they used billy clubs and whatever. And I don't know the exact details, but his sister, who took care of him in later years until she passed, said he was unconscious for like it might have been more than a day. I mean, they really wiped him out. So he comes out of the army, and if you look at his early fights, in fact, that's when he knocked out Archie Moore. I mean, he was still going pretty strong in 45, but then he starts losing. You know, he lost 3 in a row. He lost to, you know, Ezra Charles. He lost to Lee Q Murray. Trying to think. Oh, he lost to Walcott on a close decision, but she said his reflexes never were the same. But his memory seemed to be fine to me. And when I watched the footage of the older fights, you know, wasn't his peak, but he still was slick. And I did know a lot about him. And I considered it an honor that he would say that, you know. But when he was in a nursing home, when he was 91, coming on 92, and he was starting to really fade, somebody would come up to him. And apparently he wouldn't recognize him, you know. And apparently my name was delved in it was in his brain. You say, "Who is that? Jerry Fitch?" And they go, "No, no, it's so and so." So he would remember my name, you know. And when I did the book on him, he was starting to fade. But yet, when I gave him a copy, my book on Jimmy, he just sat there, just staring and going through the pictures. And I'm sure some of it, no pun intended, rang a bell with him. But I was honored. I knew him for more than 40 years. So if someone says, "Well, who was your favorite fighter?" If you're talking about a fighter and a person and somebody I never saw actually fight live, uh, without a doubt, it'd be Jimmy. John talking the story about his dad, and you talking about your dad. My dad, I can't come up with the same kind of story, but I will say I give my dad credit. My dad was not a big boxing fan by any stretch. Uh, but when we got our first television, like in 1951, um, he would watch the Friday night fights and Wednesday night fights or whatever, you know, the Paps and the Gillette. And it had to probably be a Friday night fight because me being that young and being in school, I doubt I'd be up late watching fights. But my dad was watching a fight, and I believe Jimmy Bivens was on television, televised fights 8 or 9 times. And I don't remember who he was fighting, but I remember my dad saying to me, and I'm just watching because, you know, it kind of mesmerized me. 2 guys beating the living tar out of each other. You know, what is this all about? And he says, "See that guy there? Which one?" When Joe Louis was in the army, he was a heavyweight champ. He was recognized as a duration champ. I go, "Oh, really?" You know, but I, you know, obviously didn't really see much of that and remember much of that. But because of that, that kind of got me a little bit started. And my dad, who was not a boxing fan, in my latest book, I talk about the Cleveland Arena when it opened in 1937. The first 3 years, 37, 38, and 39, on the December Toy Fund show, Henry Armstrong was featured defending his welterweight title 3 years in a row and defended it, you know, 3 times. My dad was at one of those fights. So he would say, "Oh, man, I saw perpetual motion. That guy was something else." So these little tidbits, not what you guys went through, but it did kind of give me a little opening, you know. But Jimmy Bivens was fantastic. And then, as I write in the chapter, as the years are going by, you know, with technology and other things, I found out a lot more things about him that probably would have included in the book on him. But hey, you know, at least I got a book out on him while he was alive.
All right, guys, remember the grueling truth is powered by betting.net, which is legal sports bookmaking, unlike Jimmy Bivens' ex-wife. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sports book that's right for you. Make sure you check them out at betting.net. All right, also, A Few More Rounds, John. You can find it on Amazon, correct?
You can, and at Barnes & Noble, and Jerry and I were just talking about it this morning. We obviously, because, well, we're not because we're greedy. We just wish that more people would have read it because it hasn't sold as well as we hoped. But the flip side is it's got 5 stars, universally 18 reviews. And that, of course, makes us very happy. Not for our egos, but we really wanted to entertain the people and give them some poignant stories about fighters that we have talked to and hung out with. And like Jerry had Jimmy Bivens and I had Armando Muniz, and that's in the story where you get to know these guys, and they're great guys. I don't think I met one fighter fighting that was a bad guy. I mean, they're just such nice people, and they're so honest.
And we've talked about that before, John, where we both have had guys we couldn't stand when they fought, and then we finally talk to them, and we walk away thinking, how the hell could I have ever not liked them?
Yeah, exactly. And they're not. Some of them have one image and another, and they're just really down to earth people, and that's what I really like about them, and that's really what it is with our book. It's an intimate look at some of the things in our boxing history, and real quick, that was with Jerry. I picked up right away that in a lot of ways he was a kindred spirit. He was going to Los Angeles, I was going to Los Angeles. Now, obviously, years later, we were doing different things. He did it in a more deeper way than I did, being involved in a lot of the events and a lot of things that I did a little bit later. But the love for boxing, he actually boxed. I don't know. I think he sparred more. I sparred once. I think Jerry.
I had a 12 amateur fights. Not
He had 12 amateur
fights. Not in the Golden Gloves or anything. But actually bouts. 3-round
yeah,
bouts.
There you go.
Enough to rattle my brain.
Exactly.
Yeah, that explains it, right? I want to say one other thing though, John. We're talking about promoting our book. Autographed copies can be obtained from both John and I. Going on Facebook with Messenger or our email addresses, which are available. The one thing John and I were talking about this morning. We just clicked on this. It was amazing. It's the beginning of the pandemic, and we literally put this book together in 4 months or less. It was mind-boggling. I mean, just so much fun. He'd throw a chapter at me, and I'd proof it, and I'd throw a chapter at him, and it really was something I had never dreamt of. It was just amazing that it came together, and the blend of the two things. And most of the comments we get from people, depending on the age, of like if somebody like Nigel Collins or some of the other ones like Mike Silver or of course Russell Peltz, that are basically my age, 75, 76 in that ballpark, they gravitate to the older stories, of course, but everybody has said what a great blend of stories. To usually a book like me, a lot of my books are basically about older fighters, and John, of course, writes a lot of more current stuff, but to put them both together, I think that was the key. And regardless of how many we sell, I wouldn't trade this experience with John for anything.
Yeah, I can tell you this. John sent me an autographed copy, but on my autographed copy, you probably can't see it, but Mike, this has pictures. So right there, he took a shot at me while signing the book. So it was kind of disturbing, but I think he just did that because, I think A Few More Rounds or Blood on My Notebook. I don't think there was that many pictures. I really like.
There were none. You chronically complained about that.
So well, it's because you gave me Intimate Warfare, which is a hardback book that's awesome that I think you can buy on Amazon. And Ed Mulholland took all the pictures. So anytime Ed's taking the pictures are top notch.
Exactly. Very true. Very true.
All right, Jerry, we're going to have you come back sometime on our weekly boxing show when there's no live fights coming up. We can just sit here and talk about Cleveland boxing history or something.
Great. That'd be fun. I'd look forward to it.
Because there hadn't been much Cleveland boxing history.
No, not really. Even some of the decent fighters we've had have kind of moved on somewhere else, and they
especially since Don King is no longer.
Oh well,
relevant.
Let's not go there. I will say this: I don't want to step on our promotion of our great book, but my Cleveland Arena book, the arena closed in 1973, so the last chapter is all about Don Elbaum. Now, this is the kind of guy I really like, the kind of a meat and potatoes kind of promoter. a lot of funny stories about him, about owing money to this and staying in different hotel rooms because they hadn't paid the previous one. But this guy was a promoter, and he wasn't some huckster. And that's all I'm going to say. I mean,
You mean he wasn't Don King, Jerry?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're right. And yet Don King, both of them are 90 years old. I mean, it's like unbelievable,
Yeah, for some reason, boxing promoters all live to be at least 100.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bob Arum is right. Yeah,
that's that song and the lyric, "Only the good die young."
That's what I always think with Don King. But then you got guys like Don Elbaum and Russell Peltz, who I actually like, and
yeah.
it doesn't really compute them.
Russell Peltz is, one of my regrets, because I did travel to a lot of places to see fights. I saw fights in Mexico. I saw fights in California, different places. Saw them in Toronto, Cleveland, New York, Miami. I never got to go to a Peltz fight in Philadelphia for whatever reasons, but I followed him and I knew him, and we've never physically met in person, but we've been in touch with each other for a long, long time, and he's always been very fair to me, and vice versa. I can't say enough good things about his career.
We need to have him on the show, John.
Oh, absolutely.
I did set up to interview him a few years ago, but something happened and we had to put it off, and then we never did go through.
I think you should pursue that because he
talk about the Blue Horizon, right?
Yeah.
The fights at the Blue Horizon. I mean, that's incredible.
He was really something, and some of the stories, it's so great. I mean, he's talking about, hey, we made money on this fight. I cleared $40 when he was first starting out. Oh my God, to have it's amazing. That he stuck at it for so long. I mean, basically, he's officially not retired now, but he more or less is. But in 50 years, and his book is a gem. Great title, $30 and what's it? $30 a cut eye, John? Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, John, tomorrow we doing our regular weekly boxing show?
Yeah, it just depends on the time. I can't do it at 9 a.m. because I'll be
What
on
time
the
you
road.
want to do it?
I don't know, 4 o'clock my time. That's 7 o'clock your time.
Yeah, we can do that. And we will preview Derek Chisora and Kubrat Pulev. Isn't that this weekend? That is a classic fight right there. That's just like Bivens and Moore, I think.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I mean, he says that stuff with a straight face. Did you see that, Jerry?
I did not say that with a straight face.
He just fell off the camera.
Yeah, I know. That's why I had to move my face so I could see it. Also, I wanted to let everybody know that we will have our Boxing Legends show back on Monday. I'll be interviewing a former middleweight contender, Michael Basoka Lajide. So make sure you guys are here for that. Jerry, any final words? You want to plug any more books? Because
yeah. Okay, if you asked, I'll tell you.
Do it.
My Cleveland Arena, the title of the book, Cleveland Arena, Ohio's Professional Boxing Mecca, 1937 to 1973. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Arcadia Publishing, who published it. And, of course, I have copies to sign, whatever. And I think the best bet, anybody that would see this can reach me on, just direct message me at Jerry Fitch on Facebook. I also have my own website, Cleveland Boxing History.
All right, John, you want to plug away?
Sure. And by the way, just a little plug for Jerry's book. I read Cleveland Arena because he just happened to send me a copy, And while I was in the process of moving, so I read it, and trust me, even though we are co-authors and we're friends, it is excellent.
Are there pictures, John?
150.
I'll have to get the book if there's pictures.
Yeah,
150 there for everybody. These guys that can't read can enjoy it.
Yeah, there are.
I can read. I just now,
I
as you get older, the words are hard to see, Jerry.
Yeah,
there's that.
Yeah, you need bigger print.
Yeah, so
I like books on Audible now.
Yeah, really.
Go ahead, John.
But Intimate Warfare, of course, is continuing to sell on Amazon, which of course it has to with those two guys, Gotti and Ward. I look back at that. What an experience with Dennis Taylor writing that. And then Blood on My Notebook is my baby, and that's the one Mike and I talk about because it's a lot of what I've done over the years, like Jerry did with his 50 years and 50 fighters and all that. Mine was more just my whole journey through writing the freakish nature that I even got involved with it. And then this was really a good way with the third one to talk more about the intimate details of getting to know fighters and being friends with them and hanging out with them. I mean, I when you were talking about earlier, my experience with Kareem Mayfield in the Fillmore, Mike, if you remember that one, when I got out of the car, and this is a flip side of the Muhammad Ali and everything side. When I got out of the car and was walking up the sidewalk, I was the lone white guy, and there was about 40 black guys standing over there in the corner, and they were looking at me like, who's that? And I was thinking, I don't know. I'm just, and then Kareem showed up and he yelled out to them, and he said, John's with me. I was like, because they didn't look happy. And then I was okay because I was with Kareem, so that's the kind of stuff. And Jerry, with one of his stories where he was going to, I can't remember it exactly, Jerry, you were going to race. You were thinking about, or some of you were going to race because you had a car with like a Hemi motor in it or something. And Jerry and I both like hot sports cars too. So,
that was Doyle Baird.
That's it. Yeah. So, I mean, this is what I mean.
Yeah. Thank God there was nobody on the road that day, including cops, because we were nuts. I mean, we both had two big cars. I was a big Buick with a 455 in it, and he had like a Olds or a Cadillac. It was bizarre. He had just knocked out Earl Johnson in the second round for L-bomb. And I only vaguely knew him then. I eventually got to know him very well. But, hey, want to run? Kind of joking. You wind down the window. And two, we go flying down like a couple of nuts.
Yeah.
But, fond memory.
That's what I mean. I mean, these are just fun, not just boxing so much. It's just stories of our lives. So yeah, they're all on Amazon. They're all available, and Facebook is there too. Jerry does that much better than I do. But if anybody wants a signed copy from us or whatever, just contact us and we'll get one out to you.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So definitely go check out A Few More Rounds with John Raspanti and Jerry Fitch. Also, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. We have a new Twitter account up now, so we got to get our followers up since for some reason we lost our Twitter account before. But you can check us out, our shows on just about anywhere you hear podcasts, including iHeartRadio, Spotify, you name it, we're there. I want to thank John and Jerry for coming in. Make sure you check out the Inside Boxing Weekly Show tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time with me and John. But for now, for Jerry Fitch, John Raspanti, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been watching and listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends